Well, this morning we are going to pick up and continue our study through the book of James. Just as a reminder, James was written by James, who is pretty clever on that one. He is the half-brother of Jesus, right? Remember, same mom, different dad. And he, kind of an interesting story. You kind of see how he, according to the scriptures, him and the other siblings all thought Jesus was crazy when he was going around and saying he's the Son of God and preaching this stuff. But then they have a conversion, and now he's very on fire. And so he writes this letter, and he writes it to the early church. This is written, don't know exact time, but this is clearly written, especially with the way he writes and the audience, it's early church, right? So this is kind of written too before, Paul started going and the Gentile church kind of exploded, and then all of a sudden it outnumbered the Jewish Christians. But this was written, very early, and he writes in a very the traditional wisdom style of the Bible. You see it in Proverbs. Ecclesiastes has some of this stuff, but he kind of hits these, short little things of wisdom, and he's very practical. He's gone through and told us about how to deal with trials. If we need wisdom to ask God for it. He's talked about how, we need to have a living faith. If you remember that when we was talking about, faith without works, that's a dead faith. Faith without works, just hearing and not doing, like you come and look at yourself in the mirror and you walk away and you just don't remember who you are every time you come past a mirror. Who's that guy? In other words, he's saying it's odd. It's not normal. And so he's encouraging us, we need to be active in our faith, right? We talked about that, encouraged you guys, get active in your faith. Don't just be a Christian consumer, where you come in. Because you can be a Christian consumer at your house. There are men and women who are preaching much more eloquent sermons than I am, and you can go online and watch them if you want. So why do we engage in a church? Because we're supposed to live out our faith. We're supposed to be in community. We're supposed to be helping and loving one another. That's the whole idea. So that's where he says, you coming in and hearing all this stuff and then you go off and you never do it. That's weird. That's not what we were created for. So we got to have this living faith. And now he's jumping in, and we're here in chapter 3, and he's going to talk to us about how also wisdom, you need to have a living wisdom. All right, you can have a dead wisdom and you can have a living wisdom. So the first part of James 3 we already talked about. He was addressing controlling the tongue and speaking to as well to those like pastors and people who want to be leaders, really making sure that we get it right and watch what we say, and take it with some gravitas, some heaviness in there. Then he jumps in and he talks about wisdom, and he kicks off by saying in verse 13, we'll pick up, he writes, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom." All right, so he asks, who is wise and among you? And actually the word he uses in there, it's the same word that they would use for teachers and leaders. So, he kind of started talking about teachers, so he's kind of still poking at me as well. But he's writing this to all of us. If you think you're wise, he says, well, then let me see it by your good life. In the same way that faith kind of has an invisible quality, right? It's kind of tough to look at someone and just by their makeup say, yeah, that's a great man or woman of faith. How do you know it? You look at their life, right? And they'll show you with their life. And he's saying it's the same thing with wisdom. Wisdom's kind of, how do you tell someone that's wise? Look at their life. And it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if any of you have ever worked in a gig economy, where you kind of get hired kind of per gig, per event, and you have to show up still on teams, and you might not, sometimes you might work together, sometimes you might not, or you might have to bring in a new person on the team. And growing up, my dad owned his own television production company and would do lots of commercial shoots and things like that, real boring videos for, corporations who want to talk about their, new machine, and just some real boring narrator. And the la-da-da-da-da connects to the such and such, and dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. But they need videos, and we would go and shoot them. Now, the thing is while my dad would direct and produce it, like, we didn't have on staff the full team that's needed. Like, we didn't have a lighting guy with all the lights and, makeup people and all this stuff. So when we would go and do a shoot, we'd have to hire people. And so the trick is, how do you know if anyone's good or not? Because if you ask everyone, they say, yeah, I can do that, right? But you want to know that they're good on it. So, you like to get some recommendations or stuff. And there's some outward signs, some things you can do just by looking at the person, like tell if they're good. Like if we hired a lighting guy and he showed up and he is unboxing brand new lights, taking all the stands out, pulling the plastic off of the stands, you wouldn't be like, oh, sweet, this guy's got awesome brand new lights. You're like, has this guy ever done this before? Right? You're a little nervous. It's kind of like, I remember a story my cousin telling me once. He was here Easter jamming up on the guitar, if you guys remember him. And so he's this touring musician, and he said he was on tour and he had needed a new guitar. So he goes and he plays some guitars, and he got this, I think it was a Fender Stratocaster, and it just looks beautiful. And he said the first thing he did is he takes it out of the box, takes all the plastic off, and then he took it into the parking lot and dragged it around on the asphalt. You would think, why would he do that? Man, because you don't want to be a gigging musician who shows up with a brand new guitar that looks like you've never played in front of people before, right? It's like you don't want to be that guy. So you got to kind of scuff it up, so that when he walked up, it's kind of like, oh, yeah. So again, there are some kind of outward things that help you sort of pick up on whether or not someone's good. Right? It's like if you have a handyman come over to your house and he shows up and he says, cool, hey, do you got any tools? Right? How many of you are like you're going to stop that project real quick? Like, hold on a second. No, I'm really good. Yeah, well, you're not showing me that you're good. Right? And so in the same way, wisdom, much like faith, right? He said first, if you have a faith and you're not out there doing good works, I don't think you got much of a faith. And so here with wisdom, you say, you're saying you got wisdom. Show me with your life, man. Show me by good deeds, by deeds done in humility. See, it's not mere knowledge, but a lifestyle of obedience and humility. And if I can be honest with you, there's a lot of people out there who bring knowledge, and they want to tell you that they're wise, but they are not coming with humility or meekness. They want to tell you all the wonderful things that they have. One of the things that I've found interesting, so I've been in ministry for, pretty much my entire adult life, 25 plus years. But just the last 2 years have been like senior pastor guy. And so one of the things I noticed, the difference is way more people want to hit me up and just ask me questions, theology questions. And it's fun. It's very nice. And most of them are really nice. They'll come in and they'll ask me, what do I think about this prayer? Or what do I think about this? Or what about that? And you're kind of never quite sure where it's going. And because it'll be random people. Like people that just hit me up. I don't know where they find me. I guess I'm on the Facebook, so they find me that way, or they just Google churches. But they'll ask these questions, and the ones that respond and say, oh, thank you so much for your response. I kind of lean a little bit more this way, but here's why. But thank you so much for explaining that was very pleasant, right? And then those people that contact me, I don't know who they are. I've never met them. And it's like they start a fight with me in the first paragraph of what they're writing. I'm just like, who are you? And I'll just kind of politely respond, and they'll come back. Well, I've had people tell me before, well, I don't think you can teach me anything, but I sure could teach you a lot. Wisdom is shown by good life and by deeds done in humility. They come from wisdom. So when I sit there and think that, I said, this person might have some knowledge. I don't think they got wisdom. And we don't even know. I don't even know who this person is, right? And they just jump into those things. But sometimes we do the same thing. Guilty as charged, right? You'll get convinced, oh, you really know something, and you got to tell people all the way that they're wrong with it. And you're right, right? So you want to go in and explain it to them. And listen, there are times that we need to do that as well. The thing is, we're supposed to be doing it through humility. And if you think, someone comes to you and gives you advice, and you're kind of wondering, well, should I listen to this person? What have you? Look at their life. As many of you know, my dad has a marriage ministry called Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. And I joined him right on the ground floor in 2003 when it got started. Now, I have since, I don't go out and speak very much anymore, but there was a time kind of before I came down here where I would go out and I'd speak a lot as well and talk on marriage. I'm very pro-marriage, talked to you about that last week. But when I started off right in the beginning, I couldn't talk to anyone about marriage. I was 23 years old. I'd been married a whole 2 years. I had 0 kids. Now, you want to know what's interesting? A lot of the things that I say today, I believed those same things back then and would have said them. But again, how many of you who've been married 30 plus years want to listen to some 23-year-old dude, still looks like maybe he's in high school, get up and talk to you about marriage? Not probably so much, right? You're going to want to say, well, show me. Now, if I come to you and I say, listen, I want to talk to you about marriage. My pastor been married for 25 years. I got 4 kids. 2 of them are adults now. 1 out of the house, one foot out. We're halfway there. Now it's like, okay, well, this dude's lived a little bit of life. And if you want to say, well, should I really listen? You go talk to my wife. Go talk to my kids. Say, how awful is he really? Right? And if you say, well, no, he's great. My wife says, I actually do like that guy. Okay, well then maybe, right? It's because it's a good life lived. Same thing, you want to get advice for business. You don't find some guy who's, never done anything and just full of opinions. You find someone who's actually been successful with it. Hey, how did you get there? Hey, some advice, right? So let's make sure we're not just listening to word, but you're able to look out there and see. And again, he's talking about teachers. I would hope that you hold me to that. If I'm up here telling you, how to parent and this and that, you think, man, his kids can't stand him. Not a one of them. Which I'm pretty sure that's not the truth, because I think they'd tell me. Then why should I be up here? I'm just trying to cover up. I'm trying to be something I'm not. But I don't want to be that. I'll be honest with you. I usually tell you guys when there's something like, hey, I was preaching this, we need to do it, and I got to tell you, I struggle with this still. And I do that because there's more wisdom in that than me trying to make it look like I got all the answers. Well, I could teach you all so much if you all just listen to me. Y'all just listen to your pastor. Get things right. You don't want to listen to that. I want to teach you the right things, and my hope is that my life can speak louder than my words, which is often the case, right? So he's telling us that you want to be wise and understanding. Watch how you live. Are you humble? There's a theologian, Joseph Benson, who said, people are naturally desirous of the reputation of possessing an understanding superior to that of others. Right? We want that. We want to know that we're smarter. Right? This is why the internet's so wonderful. Social media, we can just find someone who makes a comment. Whoa, he's wrong. 475 posts later, and you both still stand on the same side of the issue as you did before. Because usually people are going into that to show that they're, look how right I am. Look how, I'm so right. There's another theologian, Henry Alford, who writes, wisdom and knowledge, without these being shown, are as dead as faith would be without works. Right? You think you got all this knowledge, but you seem to have no wisdom. There's no humility. There's your life's kind of a mess, and this, And again, these people that come to me, and sometimes they tell me like, I've got this great message from God. I need to tell you what it is, and no one listens to them. Like you would think at some point, you would think, maybe this isn't what I'm called to do, because no one listens to me. Right? Whereas if you got someone who's sort of built something, and they bring something to you, like, okay. And I try to engage them and chat with them, but they're usually pretty focused on just trying to make one point. And I just smile and say, okay, God bless you, man. Now he goes on to talk about now this wisdom, what earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom look like. In verse 14, he says, "But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic." Easy, James. Goodness gracious. He feels strongly about this. Now, those words that he brings up and that he mentions, those are the opposite of the humility in the wisdom that he just talks about. And they're really describing someone who's like a critical person, someone who's the looking to start a fight kind of person. Constantly coming in, well, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with you, da-da-da-da-da. And they're just kind of real contentious and just jumping in there. They've got something inside of them that just needs to be known. And he jumps at that. He says, listen, man, that is not heavenly wisdom. That's earthly junk. He calls it demonic. And part of the reason is because it doesn't bring wholeness, does it? It doesn't bring and make things better. You know, there was times that Jesus was a little, you think, well, he walked in the temple once, started flipping tables and kicking people out. He yelled at the Pharisees and told them they're all a bunch of hypocrites. Was he doing that just so that he would look better? Or was he doing that because he's trying to make something whole? It's like, how do we do that? I know without Christ we can't. It's so easy just to kind of lead with ourselves. But there are times we so get in our minds that this is how I think and this is what I'm going to do it. We just go after it. And you get yourself convinced that the way you think, that's right. I know the Bible might say something different, but God needs to listen to me. And we think it so much, and it's hard to sort of let that go. But, hopefully there's something as you're going through, and like when I read this, just things pop up of like, oh my goodness, am I being like that in this area or that area? Because you just kind of go and you're just sort of being you. James Moffat writes that religious people may be extremely provoking. Some of you have met some of those people. And he says, and they defeat their own ends by overbearing methods. As religious people, we're trying to do right. We're learning what righteousness is. We're learning how God wants us to live. And when we see that not happening, we want to jump in, and sometimes we can be a little overbearing. And no one wants to listen to us. You're defeating your own the purpose is to bring righteousness. And they're shutting you down because of how you're coming in. He goes on to say, right views and sound counsels may lose their effect if they are expressed by those who are self-seeking partisans or unscrupulous controversialists. Again, you just trying to go into something, you just love arguments. There's some of you here, you know it. You're like an expert arguer. You're thinking, maybe I should have been a lawyer. Just like, I love fighting. I love going into arguments. And you'll come up and you'll be like, hey, so you're not supposed to be like this. And, people in your life, and you want to bring about righteousness, right? You may want to move people in the right direction, but you just come on so intense and they're just like, I don't listen to anything that you say. But in your mind, just convinced, but I'm right. But I'm right, and I know it's right, and you just come in. But it's not always just having the knowledge. There is a meekness to wisdom. And if you're not having that, he says your wisdom is earthly, which means you have your view more on this life than the next. You've got the unspiritual. In other words, is your wisdom being based not on things from the Spirit, but things in you? Your evil desires, just you. Well, this is what I think. Well, I know that's that, but this is what I think. All the way to where he calls it the demonic, which is inspired by demons, and it's usually its result can sort of be seen. Satan came to kill, steal, and destroy. If every time you come in to bring your wisdom and things blow up and you leave rubble behind you, maybe that's not heavenly wisdom that you're bringing into that situation. And it happens sometimes. We should apologize and look where we can fix it. And this is why we need to focus on what, as he calls it, the heavenly wisdom. In verse 17, he says, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all, and he gives us this list, pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. And peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. Now he gives us some great definitions and trying to frame in. This is more what a heavenly wisdom. First of all, it's pure, which means it's free from sinful motives. It doesn't have too much you in it. You're doing it for very pure reasons. Next, it is peace-loving. Which I got to be honest with you, I jumped into several arguments in my life, and it usually peace-loving probably would not have been the word to describe how I brought the message. Because I was causing more chaos than I was bringing peace. See, heavenly wisdom wants to bring this peace-loving. The Jewish people, they call it the shalom is the word they have. And so when you hear this peace-loving, this peace, think of the shalom. The shalom is not just without conflict. That's one form of peace, right? Peace just, okay, as long as there's not conflict, then that must be shalom. No, see, shalom is a wholeness. Shalom is making things whole. Not just the absence of conflict, but it's making everything whole and everything good. So the wisdom that we have and from heaven, we should be looking to make things whole. And listen, there are some times that we need conflict in order to make things right. And so when we see that there's a time that we need that, or we need to bring up a tough situation, obviously if you're married, you need to practice this. You think, well, how do we do this? Again, we only do this through Christ. And then he goes on to say, and it is considerate or gentle. The word he uses there, it's epiakes, if my Greek is any kind of close to that. And there is William Barclay, who's a theologian guy, who says, the man who is this epiakes is the man who knows when it is actually wrong to apply the strict letter of the law. So there's actually times where it's wrong to the strict letter of the law. He goes on to say he knows how to forgive when the strict justice gives him a perfect right to condemn. But again, you look at Christ, who we follow. How many times did he run to someone in sin and he extends grace? Even though, yes, the law says this, he extends grace. I mean, the whole fact that we're here today and we can call ourselves Christians is because he extended grace to us, even though we have broken the law. And so when you have a heavenly wisdom, you're mirroring our Father in heaven. And so that wisdom, it gives you this considerate gentleness that helps you to understand when is the right time to offer grace. He goes on to say it's impossible to really find an English word that translates into the quality that's written here, but this kind of this idea, he says it's basically what Jesus is talking about when he says do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's that same kind of grace and consideration that we should have. He goes on to say then it should also be submissive, a willingness to yield. Which is weird because if you think I'm going to come in and I'm going to bring some wisdom into this thing and we might have to have a little bit of a back and forth, or I might need to tell someone they don't have something right, that you actually go in with this idea of this willingness to yield. In other words, there might be times you need to be quiet and you need to listen. And for those of us who know, we know we're right. We know we're right and there's nothing you could say that would change that. We don't want to listen, do we? And I'm saying we because, yes, I have maybe done this once or twice. Maybe. But true wisdom is this sort of this calming, this patience, this willingness to yield. You know, this idea of that I don't want to so much be heard. Let me hear. Let me hear in this situation, hear where this person's coming from. Because again, if I'm coming in too with this shalom to make things whole, just destroying the other person doesn't make that whole, does it? So we need to listen to them, find a way to make that whole. He says that it is also full of mercy. It doesn't judge others just based off of the strictness of the law, but we will extend a generous hand full of mercy and grace. And that's tricky because, you know, we're always trying to decide, like, when do we need to give grace, and then when do we, you know, as we in the church like to call it, what's a slippery slope? And we're trying to figure that out. When do I need to just hammer down on this thing, and when do I need to offer some grace? One of the things that I think is so helpful, and one of the things I it's saying in here, don't get your eyes so focused on the law. You're aware of it, it's there. But put your eye on the person. Pray for that person. God, what does so-and-so need? I'm concerned. I see some things here in our law. What needs to be done to get them right again? And it's not just by going around and pointing out all the, you're wrong here, 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 you're wrong here. You want to listen to me? No. Because how many of you love it when someone comes in and tells you that things you're doing in your life are wrong? Some of you are real good with it, but most of us, especially if it's something we feel really closely about, someone tells us we're wrong, they just go, don't even start with me. I'm not wrong. And so, but when you're focused on the person, and you're not just coming in trying to whack-a-mole all their sins and whatever, but you're going in to the person. Yeah, the mess is just there, but I'm moving in towards you. That is more of a picture of what Christ does. Yeah, we have sin, we're messed up, but he moves towards us. And so when you see someone acting in that way, that is a heavenly wisdom. He goes on, he says it's also full of good fruit. And we sort of talked about this when you see people actually have good fruit in their life. He goes on to say that they're impartial, free from prejudice, discrimination, which is a great reflection of God's character. God's character. You know, make sure that we're not giving preferential treatment. Certain people get more this way or that way. We tend to, you know, discriminate certain people, how they look, how they act, their age, ethnicity. And it's like, no. We can't do that. Again, look at the person. He talks about as well how it's sincere, which is, you know, I talked about we don't want to be hypocrites. This is what this means. Sincere means you truly are authentic. Don't pretend what you are not. You're struggling with something? Yeah, I struggle with it, man. But I'm a sinner saved by grace. I'm trying to work on this thing. You know, that's why we don't want this to be a place where it feels like you have to come in and just everything has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, sister so-and-so, did you hear what she did? And there's some of us, the way that makes us feel better is we like to jump on other people's sins and point them out. Because it does. It kind of makes us feel like, well, at least I'm okay. Well, at least I'm not like her. At least I'm not like him. Did you hear what happened? Oh, my goodness. You know, don't be like that. That's not wisdom. And the truth is, but for the grace of God, be any of us. We look at someone who's hurting, who's going through something, our heart should break. How do we help this person? Not just, let's light them on fire. Hang them up. Point out what they did. Make sure everybody knows what that person did. They're so awful. And then we walk away. My dad's always had this saying. He says the Christian army is the only army in the world who shoots its wounded. We're supposed to be the ones helping people? We're supposed to be the ones that are known because we love each other? If those outside of the church look at the church and want nothing to do with it, it's because of us. It's because we act that way. Who would want to be a part of that? Thanks, I got enough hypocrites over here. I don't need all y'all. So let's fight against that. Let's fight to truly love each other. Again, when you look at this, all these things he says, it's pure, it's peace-loving, it's considerate, it's submissive, it's full of mercy, it's full of good fruit, impartial, sincere. Who can actually do this? And there's only one person that has walked the earth who has embodied all of this perfectly, and that is Jesus Christ. And this is the only way we can do this. You know, it says that when we have faith in him, it's as though the Spirit of Christ lives inside of us. You know, when they were little, they told us Jesus lives in our heart. And sometimes you'd say, I don't think he does. And my wife was having some conversation with some of the kids because I don't think Jesus lives in my heart. I don't see him in there. But the idea is there's a Spirit of Jesus that's inside of us. And so when we see this, and if we want to act like this, we need to pray, say, Jesus, you be real in my life. Help me to be showing your wisdom and your considerate and all of these things. I can't do it without you. I try and I struggle. I can't do this. I'm fallen. I'm broken. I'm a sinner. But I know that you can. And the only way to do this is doing it through Christ. That's why our eyes need to be focused on him. And listen, and if you lack wisdom, James said this in the very beginning of his letter, let those who lack wisdom ask God, who gives generously. You need this wisdom, or you got an argument you need to jump into, or a situation you need to jump into, and you know you're an expert at the earthly wisdom, right? You got that part nailed. But you're like, oh man, I want the heavenly wisdom. I'm sick of going into arguments or situations, and every time I'm done, it's worse. How do I hear what the scripture says, and I hear what the pastor dude says. How in the world does this actually work? Go to him. Ask him to help you. And say, Jesus, be real in me. Let it not so much be what I would normally do, but let me sit and act in the way that you would want me to do. Show up real in this situation. I have to have this tough conversation. Jesus, be present in me and help your wisdom to come out. I want that shalom. I want the wholeness. And there's some of you here who you want wholeness in your life and things right in your life, but there's certain things you're just not willing to let go of yet because it's scary. And you think the way I hold on to it and I can control it and that's how I can kind of protect myself, but it never brings the wholeness. You know, Jesus talks about this in Matthew. He talks about those who listen to me and then do what I say. They're like the man who builds his house on a rock. And the winds come and life comes and he just stays solid. He says, but the one who listens to me and then goes around and does things the way he thinks, he's like the man who builds his house on the sand. Wind comes, rain comes, knocks the house out. For some of us, there's things in our lives that keep being knocked down that can't seem to stand on their own 2 feet because we're not willing to let go of what we always think is right and using our wisdom instead of yielding to, okay, Christ, how do you want me to do this? How do you want me to act in this scenario? And it'll seem counter to what you may think. But do we either believe in Jesus Christ and believe he does have the best for us in our life and that we surely can have a solid life built on the rock, then we need to be willing to slowly let go of those things that we're holding on so tightly to and instead hold on to him.